Welcome to the Trueface podcast. I'm Robbie Engel, your host and just a guy trying to figure out life. We've all read and learned about the peace and freedom that Jesus makes possible, but we struggle to experience it. We get stuck in our relationships with God and others, and we wonder, is this really all there is to it? This conversation is designed to help you take a step in trusting God and others to live more fully alive. So whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on wherever you listen to your podcasts, subscribe, share, and join our growing community of Jesus followers at trueface.org. On this episode, I'm super excited to introduce y'all to a newer friend of mine. It's probably a year ago we met. We met at a campfire in Colorado.
That's the best place to meet, isn't it?
It is. It is the best place. Alan came up and said, "Hey, I prayed for you before you came to Trueface." And I was like, who are you, Alan? And as I got to know Alan, I've been super excited to hang out with him and catch up. Alan, welcome to the Trueface podcast, man.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun to get to know you, and I love what you guys do, man.
Alan, you started Stay Forth. You've been a coach, consultant for a lot of years now. You were in church. You've been a coach at Stay Forth. You started Sabbatical coaching group. You've written some books. You've got a wife. You've got 4 kids. You've been busy, man. You got a lot of stuff, and I'm super excited. And one of the reasons I wanted you to come on here is that your book Anti-Burnout and from the Stay Forth coaching side is just you every time we talk, the depth and the insight and the well that you have of wisdom for leaders and everybody, for any of us to try to figure out this myth of balance in our lives, right? It is just always an encouragement to me. So I'm excited to jump in today.
Thanks. Me too, man. One of my favorite topics. Let's do this.
Hey, so give us any more context. What did I miss on the intro? Who are you, Alan?
You know, you said busy. I use the word full for our lives. Like, after a good meal, we were like, oh, man, like I had a good meal with a friend last night, and we were just like, oh, I'm full. Like, my heart's full, my belly's full. That's how life feels. A little bit fuller this time of year, June, summertime, trips, that kind of stuff, which is very different from like a school year full. But yeah, I love my family, want to seek to lead them faithfully. I live in Colorado, so I love adventuring. And I really believe that we're designed to work hard and rest hard. And I think that it's easy to fall to one side of that. And I do hate the word balance, like you talked about. I just think life is full of managing tensions, and when we manage those well, we find maturity. And ultimately, I think that's the path of discipleship, is one that's going to be marked with tension throughout. So that's what I get to do with leaders all week long, is to help them manage unique tensions in their life, their leadership, their business, their family. And I just believe that all of it matters.
I've been going through some midlife processing at the ripe young age of 42, and I think my wife has told me that I've used up all my credits of saying things like, I just got to make it through this season. And yeah, but this is such a unique opportunity, right? She's like, yeah, you've used those up in your first 42 years.
You've been saying that for 20 years.
Yeah. So it's been this like realization of, oh yeah, I can play this movie forward, and I'm going to wake up 30 years from now at 72 and be saying the same things of like, I just got to make it through this season. This is such a unique opportunity. Is that one of the tensions?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, a season does not last, and we joke, but a season does not last 16 years. Yeah. And I have a friend who has been saying, oh, just got to get through the season, for 16 years. Yeah. And it's like, no, like that's a way of life that has become his pattern. And things like overwhelm, exhaustion, burnout, I've just watched these things become a pattern, because there's usually a lie underneath our actions. And the lie is probably, if you signed up for leadership, this is what you signed up for. Yeah. Like, this is why you get paid the big bucks, or a little slightly bigger bucks than the rest of your team, for life to kind of suck, or for you don't get to live the good life. You don't get to experience freedom. You don't get to get weekends. You don't get Sabbath because you kind of have to care about everything all the time. And so maybe on the professional side, that's one of them. But like someday it'll be good when my kids are older and I'm out of the, empty nest phase, or someday it'll be good when blank is almost always accompanied by a lie that's going to take us out of the present of savoring what God has done, what God's doing in us, around us, through us. And we're so stuck on duty and we're so slow to delight. Like leaders, we suck at celebrating. We generally suck at play or hobbies just for the sake of that, which is why I'm pumped you're going on a fishing trip here.
Yeah. I'm going fishing in a few days. Alan and I were talking about this ahead of time, and it's 0 cell phone service for about 20 miles, and I've got 3 days of nothing but fishing, and I'm like a kid coming into Christmas. There's been like exhaustion, tiredness. Like this isn't a leadership thing. I think it's exacerbated sometimes with leadership, but my friends at different ages, regardless, it feels more like a human condition than, or a societal, cultural condition. And I'm concerned because it's like, I'm looking at 17-year-olds and the anxiety levels are off the charts. And I was on a call with a bunch of 70-year-olds checking in, like upper 60s and 70-year-olds. And they were doing a check-in and they were all not managing this tension of balance well. They were, I got to figure out this and this. I was like, oh my gosh. It was like a really sobering call of like, what is this? Like unpack for us, like what is a baseline of what our expectations should be?
Yeah, really simply, there's overwhelm.
Okay.
And then there's underwhelm. And, nobody wants to underlive their lives. And a psychologist has called it the achievement society we live in. Well, and if the goal is to achieve, you can never stop, you can never rest, if that's the goal. Begin with the end in mind, and then we work backwards and reverse engineer. And so if that's the lie we're believing, then we're going to be overwhelmed. It's just going to be the symptom of that. And so the source right there, that lie, and then we work backwards to that. Underwhelm, that could be resigning, to live a less than life. That could be underliving our life. That could be based on, I don't want to go over there, so I'm going to push the pendulum to this side of just kind of like getting by. And we know too many men in our culture are just underliving their lives. And they're like, work sucks, but at least there's the weekend. And, like more toys and more fun and more trips for escape, not engagement, not for rest, not for future vision, but because I got to bide my time somehow. And so there's underwhelm and overwhelmed. And the question I've just been asking for the last decade is, what does whelmed look like? What does whelmed look like for me? And what's crazy is that, there's some of you watching and listening are high achieving leaders, but it's not requiring everything you have. You're not running on 120. You're not running on red. Like I've learned to do, Robbie, probably 5x more than I was in my 20s, easier than I was doing it in my 20s. Because over time, you learn how to do it more easily. My identity isn't all up in it. If book launch, is going super, super well, I don't feel like I'm closer to God than if it's not. Like it's just different. And so I think that's a beautiful, actually a spiritual invitation to us living whelmed to go, Alan, how has God designed you? There's the grain of wood here. Like you go with the grain of your wiring in what I call your unique design. And it's like a beautiful mind. There's stuff you can do and see and accomplish that other people maybe don't. And then when I try to compare myself and go like, why can't I do this like Robbie can? And why can't I lead an organization like this? Then it's shocking how low our output is. And sometimes over here, it's shocking how high our output can be when we're in this zone, how God wired us up to be. So, and I think the tension there between overwhelm and underwhelm, are there moments where maybe for weeks or months you need to push harder for that? Absolutely. You're going to be enjoying this time with your family in the summer, which is amazing. More and more leaders are taking the summer to do that. The question is just, how do we not kill ourselves the other 11 months out of the year in order to get to that? Hopefully we're not at -5 and then we start the week or the end of vacation or a sabbatical at -1. How do we, like Seth Godin says, how do we live a life that we're not trapped in, that we don't have to escape from? And how much more as followers of Jesus should we be asking those kind of questions?
Yeah, when it comes to like, okay, what does a whelmed life look like? Not over, not under, because I have not found that pocket. I've been struggling to find it the past couple years, and I've been going into the summer needing a reset in some ways, in different areas: mental exhaustion, tiredness, family time, different buckets. You're talking about like, when you were just unpacking what whelmed looked like, you made a couple assumptions. One, that there was a self-awareness piece of God's unique design and calling that he has uniquely positioned me to do, which saves us from comparison.
Yep.
Unpack that and how that is connected to the whelmed piece and finding the pocket of health. And one more question about that. If you understand that, then how do you develop a no muscle connected to that?
All right, Robbie, I'm going to put you on the hot seat. Sorry, not sorry. What are you incredible at?
I am incredible at having vision and courage and faithfulness to pray and then pray for God. What do you have for your kingdom in more strategic, disruptive, challenging environments, and then having the courage and faithfulness to inspire and lead others towards that end.
Amazing. The cool thing about that is you could live that out in so many different ways, right? God's moving in so many different pockets you could discern there. So let's say you're writing a book, per se, called The Path. I mean, let's say you're doing, discipleship frameworks. And I would say, okay, is that in that zone? Is that in that 15 to 20% zone? And I assume you'd say absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've got a couple people inviting me into those environments, similar to use those gifts for kingdom work right now. And I'm like, ooh, I want to do that full time as well.
And so it's, there's limitations that we have to say, we probably can't live 100% of our time in our 20%, probably until we organize our life around maybe a meaningful retirement, like a working retirement, where we can like physically pull out the role and essentially serve as, like a full-time volunteer in that space, which I look forward to doing, kind of meaningful work until I die, kind of thing. But if you're in your unique design, then beautiful things are happening and you're bringing things forward. Like one of the things that, like, for whatever reason, God wired me up to connect people and connect ideas. And so I'll be like, I don't know, in a dentist's office reading a magazine I don't care about, and I'll be like, oh, that's my next teaching idea. Right there. And it comes from something in chemistry or a completely divergent field. And so connecting those is like, and so I get a rise out of doing that. So I have to ask the question sometimes, is this a good opportunity or is this best? So I think there's timing. It sounds like you're in a divine flow of timing right here for Trueface, and some of these opportunities and partnerships are popping. That's amazing. And I think we have to take that into account. What about pace? How fast? What about load? What about where's my family at? Because I almost never run at a 10 out of 10 in the summer because that's what we've been looking forward to. We got this meaningful time away. And so how do we help structure those around those times a year and think ahead? So there's 4 or 5 different aspects of it. And that's why I love coaching, is because it's dynamic. This thing moves and then this thing moves a little bit more. And if you say, no, I'm taking a month with my family to just be, well, limitation breeds innovation. Like, okay, so that month is off limits. How do we make sure that we plan for that well? And what I find is most people are just getting lived by their lives, Robbie. They're not even living their lives. Like, this is what the quarterly reports tell me I have to do. This is what every year's schedule is. This is just the schedule I have to live by. Who told you that? Like 100% of your autonomy is gone in how you live this out. I'd like to get home earlier for my family. Cool. Can you go home at 3:00 on Fridays? Can you take half day Tuesdays? Like, can you shoulder up with the living God and co-design your life? Like we're co-creators.
Yep.
And we live in the image of God when we design. And so I think we know that we can design cities. We know we can design businesses. I'm not sure most people know that they can co-design their lives with the living God. And that breaks my heart.
Even that, like the intersection of pace and load and even selection of what I say yes to. You said at the beginning, like, is it good or great type, decision of what I should say yes to. So if we understand our gifting, our passion, our calling, different words for that, then the intersection of that pace and load and best is the dynamic balance of then determining what I say yes to, how my calendar reflects that, how my time and energy reflect that, in order to try to get less redlining or less swinging from redline to underwhelmed and find that whelmed pocket.
And pre-filters. That's what's so important is, you're tired right now because you've been creating a lot of great things. And I would argue, I call that good tired. You're good tired right now. Look at the kingdom impact you guys have. Yeah, you're full. There you go. And so not redlining, but going, man. And that's what you get. When you do a big project like a book that can create impact and income and perpetuity, that's incredible. That's an investment. And all investments are based on delayed gratification. And so you put something in now, and then that can produce things later. Beautiful. I would encourage you and others listening to just, what pre-decisions do we need to make? Like, I just had to say no to my friend's 50th birthday party on a rooftop in New York City. And guess whose idea it was for him to actually do that? It was mine. And I had to say no because that is scheduled on my kid's last day of 5th grade and my kid's last day of 8th grade. Yeah. And I'm like, is that a real graduation? Do I have to? And literally, it's just like, I'm not going to miss that. And so that was a pre-decision. I don't care who's going to be on that rooftop. I have to say no ahead of time. And that is both freeing, and obviously we live in this FOMO culture where I just kind of want to be everywhere. And man, I just think God shapes us in those limits that we have. You have a ton of kids. I have almost a ton of kids. God shapes us in the limits to go like, man, the phrase, you can have anything you want, but you can't have everything you want. And it's like, man, I want to be an amazing dad. Awesome. You're probably not going to have the best golf game in this season of life. Or, man, I want to be amazing at that. I want to, writing a book, this, like we say yes to a book and we say no to like 10,000 other little things. Yep. Because I'm like, who's that person that like is going to be released into freedom because one line that I wrote? I don't know what line or who that person is. I may never meet them, but they're through Amazon.com. They will order this book. Yeah. And like, I get the emails later and I'm like, okay, God, if I believe that you have asked me to do this, I've pre-made 10,000 little decisions of no. And I don't like that. Don't hear me say I like that. It's just I've accepted it. And I think that's part of discipleship and sacrifice and service and servant leadership and all these things that like sound great to us and sound right to us, but they hurt and they're worth the pain because of the beauty and the freedom and even the impact on the other side of them.
When was the season where, are you in it now, or was it previous, that you said, man, I feel in a whelmed pocket? And what is our expectation for how long that comes and goes? Because it's tensions to manage. Like, what are those tensions and what does that look like with the people you're working with?
If I'm honest, and I might as well be honest, I'm at the edge of whelmed and underwhelmed right now. And so, I just have come out of May. May's a no-fly zone for our family because I got all this stuff going on in the evenings, and I'm basically like an Uber driver for my kids, and I like, drop them off at this event, show up to this thing, and grab flowers for this performance, and that's not the most exciting season of life for me. Yeah. But it's so important. I want to be the first face my kids see. And they're still young enough that they like wave in the middle of it. It's me, Dad. Like, I'm not going to miss that moment.
Yeah.
But I have to miss a bunch of other things, in the meantime there's a huge dream and desire, maybe not huge, big, that will require a lot of energy that I am planning on heading toward in the fall, assuming the right partner works out for this, and potentially 2 or 3 other things that could pop. So if I were not feeling at the edge of whelmed and underwhelmed, I wouldn't have an extra 20% to put toward those things. The truth is, I got more gas in the tank right now, Robbie, than I'm needing to push toward. And RPMs are low. I've written books before, so I'm actually not like, oh my gosh, it's another book. Like, I know kind of this cycle. But that's exactly where I need to be, because we're going to power down some for the summer, and I anticipate a fall that's going to be going hard at it. Maybe it's going to be whelmed plus for about 2 months. So that doesn't really ever go away, because I think culturally it's this like, how are you going for it, and how are you pushing? And man, when we adopted kids, I'll just say I was completely overwhelmed by life. I didn't do anything wrong. It just required more than I knew. I was catching up to parenting fast. They'd come from another country. I was just overwhelmed. And I don't remember much from that season, but I do remember that at one point I surrendered to the limitations and just said, like, God, this is discipleship, is making mac and cheese for my kids, is giving my wife time to get through her master's, is just showing up well for the family and saying no to other things. And my capacity grew in huge ways. I actually thought my influence would go down in that season. My influence went up, because in the overwhelm of the other areas, my capacity grew as a leader, as my capacity grew as a dad. And it was almost a miracle I don't know how to explain. But that would be when I was brushing up against burnout in some ways, of no fault of my own. Some people are heading toward burnout because they have an ailing parent they've been taken care of for 2 or 3 years. God's honored by that. It's just hard. Yeah. Or they went through cancer with their spouse dies, and they're just emotionally toast. You didn't do anything wrong. Then there are other times where there's an identity thing. I need to be noticed. And that was me more in my 20s, when I was just like, man, I have to be noticed. And every single performance, I'm like sweating my pits out. And every single thing that I did, maybe it wasn't a performance, it felt like it, because I'm like, I have to earn my spot, my slot, my respect, whatever. And honestly, man, like, it wasn't very good, and it wasn't very fun to do that. I look now, and it's way better, and it's way more fun when I know, like, I'm already deeply loved. I don't have to fight for it.
Man, well said. The journey of figuring this stuff out, I've been evaluating a lot internally lately, of like how much of this, every season, there's often a balance to an oversimplified mind, which is like how I try to oversimplify things in my mind is like, okay, how much of this issue, how I'm feeling, this emotion, is connected to a lie, and how much is connected to a habit, right? It's either like the heart or the habit when I'm in any emotion, any season. And it's usually, it could be 90-10 or 10-90, or it could be 50-50. Half of it's a heart thing connected to insecurity, shame, a fear, and anxiety. And it could be connected to a habit of like, I'm feeling disconnected with God, partly because I haven't been still and known that and remembered He's God in like a week. Well, if you don't slow down, if your calendar doesn't reflect a habit, that's a part. Or there's a habit of like, I don't trust God with the outcome of this. I'm sweating out of my pits because this is on my identity, ego, whatever. And so when I'm looking at like the habits, does my calendar reflect a whelmed life? I'll put you on the hot seat now. I'll throw it back at you. Like, give me some of your favorite in working with all kinds of people, daily, weekly, monthly, or annual habits that you would encourage people with.
That's so good. First of all, I think the business community has really gotten it right about quarterly. Quarterly wins the day. I think it's just long enough and just short enough to course correct. And so a lot of nonprofits, here's our annual fundraising goal, but haven't broken it down to quarterly. So it feels like, I need to raise like $8 billion in the next 2 weeks. That's exhausting. That's overwhelming. Hard to be present when that's all you're thinking about. So I love breaking it down into quarters. And I love first it's year and then break it down into quarters. And I do a quarterly reassessment. And I take about 3 hours. I go usually to a coffee shop where nobody can recognize me. I like put a disguise on, no one can see me. But it's like, okay, time alone to look back, look within, and look ahead. And I don't necessarily love doing that, Robbie, but every time I walk out going, oh man, I needed that. And there's always stuff that I'm surprised. I'm like, I accomplished that. Amazing. And they're like, I just kind of forgot about that. That's okay. And I used to beat myself up. I get to the end of the year, look at my goals, and be like, I wasn't even close on that one. And then I'm like, okay, let me course correct. Or like I did this actually yesterday. And some of these are not even applicable based on things. I was going to partner with someone, and then we got together for 3 days, and the partnership values weren't there. And so I can like just cross it out and be like, they're just my friend now. That's fine. Yeah. So quarterly, I just think we've under-indexed on certain ways and over-indexed on others. And so like for me, body has been one. I think for most leaders, we could tend to under-index there and forget how much the body shapes the mind. And like I would work out and kind of squeeze it in the cracks of my schedule in the end of the day. And I'm like, actually, I'm way more present to God, my family, and the leaders I coach if I just have Monday, Wednesday, Friday locked in exercise and workout times. I can go on hikes other times or whatever. Yep. I do really well with a walk at the end of the day. And so like it may be the most fruitful thing in my whole life is my wife and I on a nice night go for a walk. We could talk about the kids without them overhearing it. She could talk about her hard day at work. I can talk about challenges and like, or just reconnect. So like a mile walk, 20 minutes is like, has changed my life. And so I think the physical right there, you talked about mental load, or we were talking about that before we hit record, like the mental load of just carrying a family, just carrying on the details, it's crazy. And you don't realize it really until sabbatical. I took all these decisions off my plate ahead of time, and it was like, oh my gosh, I have so much more mental space. This is great. I can like not be tired of my wife telling me about her, and fully engaged. And so I think those would be some areas that leaders tend to miss. And we're all connected, so it connects to the other things. We tend to be really strong on our execution, evaluation of our goals at work, those kind of things, but probably low on the empathy piece. I'm going to accomplish these 6 things through my employees, but what happens when my employee had a hard week? I probably just need to listen and pull back on what they can accomplish that week. And one of my teammates, her husband went to the ER this week. That was one of her worst weeks she's ever had, and I need to be ready for that on Monday. But just the small things. I produced a journal for this because for me, 10 minutes a day of proactively knowing what the day is going to look like, I pre-make decisions. And almost every day on my to-don't list is schedule more meetings. Yep. It was like, hey, can we get together? Can we get time? And there's all these little gremlins called texts that are like, we should do this. What about that? What about that? And it's like airplane mode. After we're done recording, I'll probably have like 42 texts. And before bed, I can answer them. Sometime I'll have a pocket of time to just go through them. But like those actually don't matter right now. I'm fully accessible and available to you right now. And that's it. I get to enjoy this moment, connecting with a friend. This is awesome. So that's been huge for me because I think the attention economy where people are always trying to vie for our attention, the best engineers in the world work for Meta and these companies who are literally trying to steal our attention all the time. We think we're smarter than that. So to me, it's just like we can stay in the shallows, as Cal Newport talks about. And so I need to schedule about 3 hours of work of deep work time, 3 hours a week of deep work time, where I can go produce things of beauty and meaning. If I'm writing a book, that needs to be probably in the 8 to 10 range. Or I just end up going, man, I want to produce deep things, but I write it. And it's just like, it's like I'm writing an email, that's not exactly soul level because I wrote it between the cracks of my schedule. What did I expect? So those are a couple of things that I wrestle with and a bunch of leaders that I coach wrestle with. And I think that, like you said, they're just common human problems in our culture today.
Do you recommend anything on an annual basis, or what are your annual rhythms, Eric?
Oh yeah. I would just say, man, get away. That whole Mark Batterson, change of pace. Change of place equals change of perspective. Go somewhere, even if it's the next zip code, even if it's one night away, and look back, because there's always more to celebrate than we think. And there's disappointments. We can name, because disappointments, it's always about unmet expectations. I hoped for this and I got this. And we can just name the gap It'd go like, yeah, I hope to be this kind of husband by now, and I'm this kind of husband right now. Either I had too high expectations, or I got room for growth, and usually it's both, and we compromise. Or my wife's like, you're doing a great job, and I'm beating myself up. And so just to name those, and then, so we're looking back first, we're looking within, and I found the hardest question for leaders to answer is, what do I want?
Yeah.
It's really hard. What do I want? I'm not talking about like, I want 3 days of fishing. That's great. Go get it. I want a long vacation with a family, but like, if we don't know what we truly want, then we're going to grab somebody else's definition of success. What am I going after? What do I actually want? And what am I wired for and designed for? And like, I don't think I'm designed or wired to lead a large corporation. I think I'm a small batch boutique kind of dude that wants to think about the intricacies of that and go like, that's okay. My friend is wired to, make billions and lead thousands of employees. That's not me.
Yep.
And just to come to terms with that. How do I do that well? And then after we've looked back, looked within, prayed, done some soul formation, then we can look ahead to the future and say, what would be a faithful way to work this out? And then we start to compare it. I was comparing to my friend's schedule. He's got cool international trips and all this next year. And like, this isn't the year for me. But 2026, heads up, man. We're getting on some planes. We're going some places. But that's not this year. Yeah.
I love that. Do you do that annual time with Julie? Like, do you do the same thing for the family?
It has never worked for us to do that. I know a lot of people that do that. So I personally, we shut down the last 2 weeks of the year on our team, mandatory. And I do kind of some exercises for myself. A lot of this happens at home. Just end of year would be, frankly, a terrible time for me to go away from the family. But I also live in Colorado, and it's a beautiful place, and I love being here. And we just kind of shut down, and it's more reflective for me than it is adventure or go somewhere else. And then we find we come to each other with, hey, what are you thinking about? I'm also more future focused than my wife. And I don't think we talk much about that. It's just like there's some people, she's very, very good at being in the present. Well, I struggle to be in the present, and I'm good at the future stuff. And for her, it takes a little bit more work to zoom out and look ahead. And I think God meets us in the middle there. I don't want to force her to be me, and she doesn't force me to be her. But I know couples that go away and do it for 3 days, and it sounds incredible. It just doesn't work for us.
Yeah, it hasn't worked for Emily and I. It's interesting asking. She's like, Robbie, if we're getting away with 8 little kids in the house and you bust out a whiteboard, I'm gonna. As we, look back, she's like, what? No.
You've got diagrams, you've got tools, and she's like, nope.
Nope. So one of your passions and kind of how we has been sabbaticals, and I know not everybody listening to this, is in ministry, nonprofit, and leadership. But what are the principles that underpin a prolonged period of rest, rejuvenation, connection to God, that you wish everybody listening to this, like, what have you been learning, and what do you hope for everybody listening to this in that camp of your world?
There's 3 R's, and I've stumbled across this. Again, I've been in a deep dive. Probably the last 5 years, I've been pretty obsessed with sabbatical. And frankly, the question, I'm a pragmatist at heart. Why does it work? Why does it work? Why do I get fresh ideas when I'm not thinking about them? Why does that thing that happens in the shower where I get my best idea, why does that happen? And why do people get creatively flat when they're overwhelmed? When we're pushing too hard, when we're redlining, why do I come with my worst stuff and I'm my worst version of myself? Why am I grumpy when I'm overwhelmed or fearful or whatever? And in studying this, it's been interesting. It's an ancient Hebraic idea. The word is Shemitah, and underneath that is release and reset. What do we need to release? And then we move to the reset, which sounds a whole lot like look back. What got you here isn't going to get you there. That's a coaching principle I use every single week. And just to honor, hey, that was something from the past and it got me here, but I actually need to leave it. Pruning. I mean, all these ideas are connected to say, man, if I want a few things to grow beautifully, I'm going to have to prune like most of the branches. Most things are good, but not best. And the problem with success is that success breeds options, and options breed disorientation. The better Trueface gets, and the more people you reach, the more the book gets out, the more invitations you're going to get, which are going to be good, not best. Oh, is that the price of success? Yes, it is. Nobody told us that, though. So that for me is the release piece of during sabbatical, to just go, okay, what do I need to release? And then the reset. Okay, future-wise, what do I need to reset? My calendar, my priorities, what really matters to me. I can say I value these things, but if they're never in my calendar, then I don't actually value these things. And then internally what happens is replenishment. The things that you were once excited about hobbies, you haven't done that hobby in 10 years. You were once just praying with God as a friend and connecting, and now your desperation, Hail Mary prayers, please save this meeting I didn't prepare for, please, we need $100,000 tomorrow for this thing, or we can't pay our people, and we're like, that's not how a friend, if a friend did that to me, I would never answer their calls.
Yep.
And just to be like, whoa, if they weren't like, hey, we should just get together. Just to get together. So that's what I find, especially in spiritual leaders, especially in pastors, to go, I just want to hear from God, not because Sunday's coming or because I have to produce something. And that happening, there's this creative boost that happens where you're like, man, I'm seeing things in HD again. And I actually have vision for this. I actually have excitement and strategy and sharpness. What's interesting, I was telling you before we hit record, Harvard Business Review just came out with this Harvard professor that has done roughly 300 studies on 300 different sabbaticals. And they're now like, there's this thing called sabbatical and it works. And it's this biblical principle that's been expanded over the years from Sabbath on micro to sabbatical on macro. And I would just test almost anyone, maybe not the right phase, but almost anyone in almost any field, to take a break, figure out how to do that. You may have to get creative. And then you would come back more clarified and likely more creative. More clarified could be, I don't want to be in this field long term. Or, man, I've devalued this part of my life or family, or I've under-indexed here. We get clarity. Maybe it's painful, but it's clarity. Yeah. And then the second thing is courage.
Yeah.
Once we have clarity, then we can have courage to take our next step. The problem is when we don't have clarity and we're confused, we take steps and we're not taking the right steps. And so those are a lot of things that I'm seeing. And then the word is reorient. We reorient our life toward the life we're designed to live, not the life that Robbie lives, not that I cheated off my friend's paper and tried to do the things he's doing and just were a crappy version of him. Here's actually the life God's designed for me to live. And that's disorienting. I don't work as many hours as a lot of people. But when I go after things, I go after them really deep and really hard. My wife runs a foster care agency, and she needs to work very full time in this season. Somebody's got to make dinner.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to pick up kids in this season. And it's not like a deeply spiritual thought. It's just like, hey, it's my turn. I'm the after school parent. And so a lot of it is based on this life, based on this season, based on our values. I want to be the dad that they have tons of memories of us together. And they ask, how the heck did he get off work so much? I want to be that dad. And I'm becoming that dad right now. Perfectly? Of course not. At the best of my ability with the living God? Absolutely.
Let's go. Alan, this has been so much fun. And for the Trueface tribe, since I gave the teaser that you prayed for me when we met at the campfire and said you prayed for me before I stepped into this role, your wife, Julie's aunt is Janet McNichol. So Bruce McNichol is your uncle through family, through marriage. Is that right? Yeah. Is that how it all happened?
Love Uncle Bruce and Aunt Janet. They've been amazing to us over the years. And so I've heard about Trueface over dinners and at the table and literally just dreaming about what does the next phase look like. So it's been really fun, man, to meet you and to see even just these new entrepreneurial ideas coming up, which is true in every organization, right? You take the heart and you take the values and the vision, and then the strategy in these, kind of crazy but also fun and unique times are up for grabs in so many ways. And hey, we're going to design our way forward. So it's been really fun. And also congrats for you, man, on 6 years and this next phase of that. You stand on some incredible shoulders at Trueface. And man, I'll tell you, the need for that message of grace not only is not going away, but there's a palpable need, and God's doing incredible things across the world, across our country right now, and we find what we're looking for. So either this is, you can see it as one of the most negative, hard times, and then there's real hard realities. But let's keep our eyes focused on the kingdom, what God's doing. And so I see you as just a partner in that kingdom work, man. Keep up the great work.
Alan, amen, and let it be so. Y'all go check out Alan's stuff at Sabbatical Coaching Group, at Stay Forth. And I'm super excited. I've got your book on the way. Tell us about the new book that just came out. You've got Anti-Burnout, which is captures a lot of what we talked about today. And then you've got a new sabbatical book coming out, The Sabbatical Journey, that just came out June 2nd.
Yeah, it's fresh. It's fresh. Yeah, I would just say, if you want to continue to live whelmed and you realize like something's off below the surface, which is like all of us actually, especially leaders, yeah. we have a bit of an issue here. Then Anti-Burnout is written upstream to you, and not, hey, I'm burned out and I'm useless right now to my family and to God, and I just have to sleep in a coma for 6 weeks. Like, that's not what it's for. It's for the leader that wants to be healthy and high impact. The sabbatical journey is really kind of a dare to certain leaders to actually take a look at this and see, could you actually work in creatively a sabbatical? I had to be real creative on my last one, Robbie, running a couple businesses and people who depend on me and all that, was able to make it work. But also for those who are heading into sabbatical or thinking about it and are just like terrified, disoriented. I don't know what this thing is. What am I going to do? I don't want to sit on the couch for 2 months. Please don't sit on the couch for 2 months. We actually have some meaningful, sacred work for you to do that looks very different from the work that you're paid for during sabbatical. So those are two of the things I'm writing into and really working into with almost every conversation I'm having with leaders.
Alan, sitting on your couch does not feel like release, reset, and replenishment, leading to clarification, creativity, and courage. You see my notes, how I did that? Y'all.
Wow.
Let's go.
Man, friends, that's the communicator right there. You actually said it better than me, which is, I think, when we know it's time to hang up. Like, that's it. That's it. Co-written, co-designed by Robbie.
Alan, you are awesome, man. Thank you so much. This is super fun, and I'm excited about what you're doing, and we're in it. I'm behind you. It'll be fun to watch you and be a partner in the years ahead.
Man.
Thanks, buddy.
Keep up the great work.
Bye.